to Central Texas Gardener. I'm Tom Spencer. Garden bulbs conjure visions of spring or fall flowers, but there are many that bring seasonal excitement to the summer garden. Today, Chris Weisinger from Southern Bulb Company picks a few tough perennials that will cool us down in the hot days to come. On tour, let's meet a family where pass-along bulbs are a part of their tradition.
When Dawson and Leanne Clark built their home in Round Rock, they also built a garden of family memories with their children, Drew and Amy, and their dogs, Jenny and Abby. They wanted to give their outdoor rooms the same attention they gave the ones inside.
We moved in November of 2003, and at the time, when we bought the house, it was nothing. I mean, the native trees were here and there was no grass. And we had worked with a landscape firm in Temple, where we moved from. Some good friends of ours named Mike and Kay Lynch own a firm up there called Earthscapes.
Mike and Kay also designed a split-level deck around the trees.
And it's spring and the fall, of course, when the weather's at its prime here in Central Texas. We grill almost every night. We eat on the deck. We spend time outside and just really have loved experiencing the garden and being outdoors in that way. And then from there, Leanne and the kids and I began just inserting things, and like every gardener, we tried some things in one place that didn't work, and we've moved things around and done all kinds of things since then. It's been a real adventure. We've loved every minute of it.
As the garden matured, it dictated some of the changes.
The landscape architect that did the initial design commented when she was here, the very first time she visited the site, that we would be amazed how quickly these native elms would grow once the garden began to be fertilized and irrigated, and that certainly has been true. When we planted the garden, there were many areas that were in full sun, so we initially planted a lot of sun-loving plants, and we are slowly but surely losing a big portion of those sunny areas, and they're being transformed to areas with a lot of shade.
But as a result, there's a spot for hostas, including some Dawson once carried in a suitcase from a colleague's garden in Pennsylvania. Because
of their story, I dug them from the garden in Temple and brought them with me here, and they have absolutely loved the garden here in Round Rock. So there's just something about the soil here that they love. It's been an interesting challenge to keep things in the right spots based on the light needs. But that's okay. Most gardeners are always digging and moving and replacing plants, so it's been fun to do that, and really has given me an opportunity to take the hostas that I love so much and to kind of spread them around a little further.
Along with planting, the family pitched in all hands for toolbox projects.
My son Drew has been really kind of my right-hand guy in the garden for the major projects. We built the fountain. I had scavenged some limestone from it was abandoned from a construction site in the neighborhood, so we broke up that stone and created a pathway around that the fountain, which we've really loved. And it's just so nice to sit on the deck and listen to the water splashing over the edge of that fountain. In fact, the neighbors even can hear it, and they talk about how much they enjoy sitting outside and listening to our fountain splashing in the backyard.
Everyone in the family enjoys Dawson and Drew's arbor and porch swing. Father and son also built the pathway for the garden shed.
built all of that together. We've really had a good time doing it. He's going to be a senior in high school next year and will be leaving, so it's been nice to have those things together and to enjoy them.
The stepping stones that Drew and Amy made a few years ago made family history too. Dawson picked up their creativity with his mushrooms out of stones. The garden's also connected to family with the 1800s ice cream table that Leanne's grandparents found and restored in the pharmacy and soda shop they owned from the 1930s to the 1950s. Dawson's grandmother, Leatrice, contributed daylilies that grew in her garden 50 years ago. For the Clarks, layers of collected history turned a new backyard into a family time capsule.
You know, some people are lake people, and some people are out big sports families, and they play all of the sports and things like that. And really, our family has just been kind of a garden family. I mean, don't get me wrong, my son still loves to play sports, and he loves basketball with his buddies. But the thing that we have done through our married life and have really enjoyed doing on our weekends is just to kind of piddle around in the garden outdoors. And when we moved here and had this completely blank slate to start from, it really was a wonderful challenge and a great experience for us to just put this together.
Thanks for sharing your garden with us. And right now we're going to be talking about one of my favorite all-time topics, which are bulbs for the garden. And we're going to be talking about not spring bulbs, but things that will last into the summer and provide real bursts of color for you in those hot summer months. My guest is Chris Weisinger from southernbulbs.com. Welcome back to Central Texas Gardener, Chris.
Thanks, Tom. It's always an honor to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. You're pioneering the use of heirloom varieties of bulbs. You go out and collect these things from all sorts of sites.
Yeah, and that continues to go on. More importantly, we're putting it in the hands of lots of other growers now across the state, so lots of regional growers growing these for us, and we're just getting them out to the market.
Well, the plants that we're going to be talking about today are really special because they, in a lot of ways, brighten up the summer gardens, and they're so dependable, too. And I've been struggling to put my finger on what is it about bulbs that makes them so alluring to gardeners and to people in general, because they are. It's a different category of plant that people tend just to fall in love with.
Yeah, well, you know, I've fallen in love with them, absolutely. And I was sitting in the airport this morning getting here thinking about that exact question, you know, why is that? And for me, they mark seasons. They tell me when they're coming up right now that spring's almost here. And in the summer, the blooms look summer, they smell summer. So, you know, for me, they are the quintessential essence of the changing of seasons, and bulbs capture that like none other. And then more importantly, they're so darn tough, though, and that's why, so they're always there to remind us of that. And then they just pop up like old friends and bloom, even when you thought they were long gone.
Yeah, and I like the analogy of like old friends, and that's, I know I think of a lot of plants in the garden that way, and I'm sure other folks in the audience relate to that. And we remember them from our childhood. We remember them from when we started gardening as adults. These are the dependable plants that have been with us, traveling along with us, just like an old friend. And they do survive all the horrible conditions that Texas throws at them. And this past year was one of the worst.
Oh, it was.
One of the worst droughts on record. 2 deep freezes in the wintertime. Yeah. And yet, these are plants that will survive all that.
And a lot of them are going to survive. A lot of people lost some plant materials that we've been able to get away with for a long time. Yeah. And some bulbs that we were pushing the envelope with. But these old tried and true heirlooms, a lot of them are going to pop back up, and they're going to be really shocked when they bloom this spring.
Right. Well, let's start off by giving people an idea of some of the different ones that are available. And a lot of these, of course, you carry. One plant family that has really kind of had a renaissance in the past 20 years are crinums. Yeah. This was, I think, probably a forgotten plant family. Just kind of relegated off to the corners of, you know, grandma's garden. Yeah. But they've really come on, and for a lot of different reasons. Big show, big bold plants for number one.
Yeah. And big bulbs. I mean,
Yeah.
we have some that are the size of soccer balls out there in the barn.
Yeah.
But then the blooms are just large trumpet amaryllis-shaped blooms. I mean, they are in the amaryllis family. And you get those big shows and that bold texture even after it's been 10 degrees like it was here in Austin and a huge drought over the summer.
Yeah.
You just don't find that toughness in a lot of summer blooming plants.
Yeah, and these are plants that, as you indicated, they have that trumpet-shaped bloom. They arrive on the top of a tall stalk and come out in beautiful sprays, sometimes as many as 20 or 30 blooms on each stalk. And there are a number of different varieties that we wanted to highlight. Mrs. James Hendry is one, and this is one that you think is an all-star plant.
Well, it is the favorite among a lot of connoisseurs. I mean, it'll start blooming in May, and it'll keep on blooming sporadically throughout the summer, and then bloom again in the fall. So you'll get 4 to 6 blooms from it. And the trumpet has the edges of it, they furl back, so you have a really open trumpet and a really nice fragrance. Yeah, it's a blush. It's a blush color.
Okay, so it's a pastel kind of color.
Absolutely.
Okay. Ellen Bosanquet. I'm not sure I'm saying that correctly.
Well, Scott Ogden, who's a native of Austin, he aptly pointed out in his book it would be Bosanquet.
Bosanquet, okay.
Yep, and it was named after an Englishman's wife.
Okay.
It blooms in the middle of summer, dark pink, almost burgundy blooms, 2 to 3 blooms, and it's a tough plant, and you'll find that in a lot of gardens, and that is one that we carry.
Yeah, and I think that's one I might have that one in my garden. I'm not sure. I had a couple of different varieties, a beautiful pink, and then one that's kind of reddish purple.
Yeah, that's it. Probably that really dark. And there's the lighter pink, lots of lighter pink varieties out there as well.
Yeah, and then okay, I have difficulty with this Powellii.
The Powellii.
Powellii.
Yeah,
okay.
And that's one of the lighter pinks. But then there's a solid white, which is a really traditional solid white bloom. Yeah, I was in England and then saw it at the Chelsea Physic Garden.
Okay.
Blooming nicely, so it's been around for a really long time. Very Victorian flower.
Yeah, a lot of these have that kind of sense of being Victorian plants.
And you find a lot of 1890s introductions, a lot of late 1800s and early 1900s introductions.
Yeah. And so the pink and white forms of that one.
The milk and wine,
Yeah.
very popular.
Yeah.
Crinum herbertii is one of those.
Yeah.
Yep, you'll find those a lot of ditches and a lot of old gardens.
See them all over town here in Austin, in the old sections of town anyway. And there's one called Summer Nocturne as well, and this one sounds like it would be a real performer for us.
It's neat because it doesn't start blooming until late summer, and it goes all the way into the fall. I mean, one of the original names was Almost Autumnalis.
Yeah.
And a nice fragrance, and it multiplies in the ground, so it doesn't take long for you to go from one bulb to many.
Yeah, and that's another joy of gardening with bulbs.
Oh, absolutely.
Being able to pass them along to friends, share them,
and then you start having so many that, since my company started 5 years ago, there are hundreds of little people who've had their bulbs propagate so much in the yards that they want to become bulb farmers themselves. So
be careful.
Well, I'm working with them now. I'm working with them. We're saying
okay,
yes, because I'm traveling doing these kind of things.
Right.
So I said, absolutely, grow them, and we'll market them. We'll help you.
Good. Well, another plant family we want to highlight are the Hymenocallis, and people call these spider lilies. There are a lot of different things that people call spider lilies, but this is another big, robust plant. Tall spikes for the blooms, and the flowers are amazing.
Yeah. Now, that's actually, people get really confused because in the northern parts of the South, spider lilies refer to the red, like chorus. So in the Gulf Coast, white spidery blooms just, they unfurl in the most elegant fashion, and they bloom in some shady areas.
Yeah.
In the middle of summer.
Yeah.
Almost like fireworks going off. It's like pure white fireworks going off, and they sort of trail off with their, in the dark.
A beautiful central cup of white, and then the long petals that come out from that. Absolutely glorious. And one of the things that I like about this plant is, you mentioned it, I think in light shade it will perform. A lot of bulbs require sun, but this is one that can converge a little bit into the shade.
Yeah. We're so used to begonias as the only bulb for shade, but yeah, this goes into the shade.
And this is a plant, too, that there's a native form, right?
Absolutely. I picked up Berlandier's expedition. He was a French explorer, and he explored Texas, and he had kept a great documentary of his travels. And I was reading about his exploration from San Antonio all the way up to Rusk, Texas. And they talk about a scene where they're walking across a field where all of a sudden they find themselves surrounded by knee-high white spidery blossoms, the blooms, and they believe it's the native Hymenocallis liriosme.
Yeah. So the early European explorers, noticing the bounty of what was here in Texas.
Absolutely.
And I'm trying to picture where that was, but I think this is a plant that likes kind of wet feet sometimes.
Blooms in spring.
So maybe river bottom somewhere.
Probably around Bastrop River Bottom area, And it's just
kind of fun to picture.
Yeah, and it's a connection to our past. Bulbs are a connection to our past.
Yeah. Another plant family that we don't want to be remiss on are the rain lilies, and these are super tough little survivors, and especially for xeric conditions.
Yeah, I mean, they almost love just being popped in between rocks and rock gardens and areas in Austin. They love those conditions, and there's lots of rain lilies on the market, and there's no way we could do 3-5 hour segments on rain lilies and not touch them all. But one of the most traditional and the largest pink blooms, which should deserves all the attention that it gets, is the Zephyranthus grandiflora. It doesn't set seed, but it makes a lot of bulbs out of its base, and it'll bloom 4 to 6 times.
Yeah, and big bright color too.
Very, very happy plants. I mean, burst of this pinks and rosy colors.
Right, and then and there's the Hebranthus as well.
Yeah, Hebranthus, and there's a slight technical differences about how the bloom shapes, but those do set seed. The Hebranthus robustus is more of a pink, big seed pods, and you'll find some native rain lilies that set a lot of seed, and we were talking about it. 2 weeks after the bloom, just go out there and
collect the seed.
Yeah.
It happens pretty quickly. They dry out, and as soon as you start to see the dry black seeds, you can start to collect them and spread them around. They do that happily.
Yep.
Chris, people can be in touch with you at southernbulbs.com.
Yes.
And you're out still in your little red cabin in the East Texas piney woods.
I am, and it's been hard to farm, so we have other people farming, and I'm traveling a lot. I'm catching the train to New Orleans this afternoon.
Well, I hope folks will catch you at southernbulbs.com and pick up some of these fabulous plants for our summer gardens. And always a pleasure to have you here in Central Texas Gardener.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, and coming up next, it's our friend Daphne Richards.
Hello and welcome to Down to Earth. Our question this week is another great one from one of our viewers, and they want to know, what does it mean to side dress with fertilizer? Great question. It's actually an agricultural term for when you plant crops into rows and hills and have furrows between them. It means to apply to the side of the plant, obviously, with side dressing. You can apply anywhere around the plant, though, around the root zone. Again, as I said, this is a term that referred back to hills and furrows for farmers. But normally, most of us don't have hills and furrows in our backyard garden, and so the side dress term we can take a little bit loosely. When you add fertilizer to the soil once plants are already growing, and you add manure, that can burn tender new leaves on plants. So that's why we dress to the side or a little bit further from the plant, and so we don't burn the plants. This little boost of fertilizer gives vegetable crops a little bit of extra energy when they are about to start flowering or fruiting or whatever they're going to do to give you the vegetable or fruit that you're looking for. For example, broccoli, you want to side dress when the head begins to form. And on tomatoes, when blooms first appear, give your plants a little extra boost of fertilizer to get it through and give it a little extra energy to produce fruit for you. Usually right around the time a plant has a growth spurt. Peas, beans, and other legumes don't really need a side dressing of fertilizer because they have a great relationship with a soil bacteria called rhizobium, which allows them to produce nitrogen for themselves in the soil. And actually, these plants are a great crop rotation in between your other plants to allow them to add some nitrogen into the soil for you. Our plant this week is Muhlenbergia capillaris regal mist, or called pink muley grass. This grass is a clumping ornamental grass, and those are being used more commonly here. It gets about 3 feet tall and 3 feet wide, which makes it sort of a medium-sized ornamental grass. Its flowers add 1 to 2 feet to the height. It's native to East Texas, but it's taken the Southwest by storm because it's so drought tolerant, and it's just really a beautiful plant. It has gorgeous deep pink flowers in the fall. Many of our plants flower in the spring, and so it's really great to have something really pretty in your garden in the fall. Those seed heads do remain on the plant into the winter, adding winter flowers and a sculptural element to your garden in the winter. It's also not as invasive as some of our other ornamental plants. As other ornamental plants, it does go into winter dormancy here, but it's hardy to -10, making it a really great plant. In the late winter, you want to cut this, as you do other ornamental grasses, almost to the ground so that it can reinvigorate itself from the roots. It does thrive in full sun and will take reflected heat, making it great for those areas on the south and the west side of your house. It can also take a little bit of light shade, so it's very flexible. It's adapted to a wide range of soil types, from clay to sand. It's very drought tolerant. And with all of the clay in our soil here, this does make a great addition to our plant palette. To do in your garden this week, you want to wrap up any pruning quickly. We're getting sort of late on that, and our plants are getting ready to bud out, especially our trees. You also want to start any warm season vegetable seeds indoors if you haven't already done that. Plants like tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, and other warm season vegetables. You also can go ahead and apply pre-emergent weed killer in your lawns to take care of any weeds that are going to grow from seed here pretty quick. We'd love to hear from you. Send us your question or plant of the week from your garden. Just go to klru.org/CTG.
Thanks, Daphne. Now let's check in with Tricia Shirey for Backyard Basics.
One of the great crops that we can grow in the cool season is mustard. Now, when I was a little girl, my mother cooked mustard greens, and I wasn't very fond of them, but I've tried them again since, and I've decided that I really like the flavor. And there's so many beautiful mustard plants that they're really quite attractive in your garden. One that I really like is this purple variety. It gets very large. Now, you can buy the 4-inch pot and actually start trimming leaves on it as soon as you plant it when it's this large, but it will grow into a very large leafy plant. I even use it sometimes mixed in flower containers. It looks pretty with a lot of the pansies. Now, the more common mustard is this curled mustard. That's the one that you find most often in the grocery store, and that one can be a little bit bitter. You can combine it with turnip greens or collard greens to help soften the flavor a bit, but I find that I like it. Now, this is one of the Oriental mustards. This one's called Mbuna, and Mbuna has a very mild flavor. It's great for stir fries. You can even put it in salads when the leaves are small. Another Oriental mustard is the Mizuna, and that one is also great for salads and stir fries when it's small, and also can be cooked as a green as the leaves get larger, and it does get to be a very large plant. Now, this new mustard I really love is called Tender Green, and it's a combination of spinach and mustard. So it has the sweetness of spinach, but the little zip of mustard too. Grows very well here, and just has an amazing flavor. Then the lacy looking mustards are really beautiful to put into your flower beds. You can buy the green one or the red mustard, and it becomes beautiful plants. Now, you can harvest the entire plant if you want and cook the greens, but I generally just take off some of the leaves down to the base of the plant and keep harvesting. And you do have to make sure that you continue to harvest regularly with mustard, because like all of the brassicas, if it's not being harvested sufficiently, it's going to go in its bloom stage. And you can actually eat the flowers of mustard. You can wait till it produces seeds, save the seeds, and make your own mustard condiment, or just use the mustard seed in your cooking, and that's wonderful. It's best to harvest the seed pods before they start to open, because they will fly everywhere. So just take those brown seed pods, put them in a paper bag, and they'll dry. And it's nice to have those in the kitchen as well. But when the flower spikes appear on the plants, just make sure you trim those plants down, and it'll get them back into the producing leaves stage. There are a few insects that can be a problem. Sometimes aphids are an issue with mustard, also snails, slugs, and pill bugs. So you might want to use some of the bait type formulas like Sluggo or Sluggo Plus. They're an iron phosphate granule to help with insects, and spray with seaweed and soap to keep the aphids at bay. Even a strong blast of water on your mustard will help keep those insects at mid Bay. And it's fairly cold tolerant too, but for the coldest nights when we're below 25, I would give mustard a cover. And it's just a wonderful plant to saute. I love to cook it with a little onion and garlic and saute it. And I'll have some recipes for using mustard on our Central Texas Gardener website. So be sure to check under Tricia's recipes and look for M for mustard, and I'll have some ideas for you using it. And if you give mustard a try in your garden, you'll enjoy the attractiveness of the leaves and also the wonderful flavor.
Visit klru.org/CTG for more tips, online video, and the blog. Next week, we take a look at design tips. Until then, I'll see you in the garden.
To learn about today's program, watch online, and follow CTG's blog, check out klru.org/CTG.